Hello and welcome to the Right Fight Podcast, a discussion about how to live a loving life. I'm Reg Lloyd, and we're having a conversation with Kenny Vaughn. Kenny, we've made our way to chapter 5 in your book, where you write about the 8 things that love is not, or as you've said, the 8 things that fear is. So far, we've said love is not anger, rude, envious, and the 4th thing that you list is that love is not prideful. So Kenny, when you think about pride, how do you define that?
So before I define it, I'd like to just say I think that pride is the most dangerous of the 8 things that love is not, or that fear is, because it seems to me to be the seed or the root of all the other things, and also because it's really well disguised. So it's like it's a trap that looks very welcoming and seems normal and expected. In other words, like, I should be proud of doing some good thing, and all these other things. But if we take the bait, if we keep playing around with it, it's like a fire, and it's going to get out of control, and eventually it's going to consume us. But I mean, the definition of pride in the dictionary is just a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements or the achievements of someone else. And so at first thought, I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being proud of what I've achieved or what someone else has achieved? And I would say at the fundamental level, what's wrong with that is that it's somewhat of a faith or a belief in ourself, and which becomes a counterfeit for a faith or a belief or trust in God. And so pride is a lot of times pride is selfish, and a lot of times pride is a response to shame. So shame is a fearful response, and sometimes it's justified, but many times it's not. But the reason that we struggle with shame is because we value ourselves. And if we can deny ourselves, that's the real answer to shame. The real answer to shame is self-denial. Selflessness is the real answer to shame. The counterfeit answer to shame is pride. So it's like the opposite side of the same coin. So you're still trapped in selfishness. If I'm ashamed, so I can feel ashamed, by the way, and many times we do things where we should actually feel some sense of shame. But whenever shame begins to rule my life, it's because I'm self-consumed or I'm focused on self. And so then the pride, then you see this in so many different trends and in so many places. You got someone who was hurt, they were shamed, they lived in this for a long time. Now they became it. They became it because they became maybe not intentionally, maybe not originally because they were selfish or hateful, but they allowed the hurt to fester for so long. They nursed it for so long that now they're self-obsessed. And once they become that, now this shame is eating their lunch, and then their response to that is to become prideful, which is also self-obsessed. And so it's the same. So it's like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, And so that's the lure of pride. But pride does 2 things when you let it take control, or if you're allowed to begin to rule your life. One is that it just totally blinds you, to your own foolishness, because it is a belief in self. And I think a great example of that is David and Goliath. And so you have Goliath, who's the monster and the giant in a land, and you have David, who's just a boy. And Goliath is coming. For 40 days, he came out to everyone and said, basically, he was saying, look at me. I'm the biggest and baddest guy in the valley, and just send anybody you have over here. If anyone can defeat me, you can have everything. And I would say that Goliath was, in his pride, his belief was in himself. And in his pride, he was standing in front of all these guys I would say he was probably fully convinced. So pride fully developed becomes totally foolish. Like he had total belief in himself to the extent that it totally blinded him. So then comes this little boy, and he says, "Why is everybody afraid of this guy?" And they say, "Take a look at him." I mean, look at him. And that's how the world is. Like, look, they act so tough, they look so tough. Everything's outside in. Look how strong they are. But David says, "Well, I'm not coming in the name of myself. I'm coming in the name of God. And I have faith and belief and trust in him." And then before he goes, I thought this was so neat. It's like before he goes, whenever he convinces Saul to let him go face the giant. And Saul's like, "Okay, well, if you're going to go, let me give you all this stuff to make you look and feel strong." So he suits him up in armor and a sword and all these things. And David's like, I can't move in this stuff, And so he takes it all off. And then he goes in humility with faith and trust in God. So he goes down there with a slingshot and some rocks, right? And then David comes out, and David says, "What a fool." I'm sorry, Goliath. I've got this backwards. Goliath comes out. Goliath says, who do you think I am? A dog? Like, you come to me with sticks? So he starts mocking David. And then he's telling him how he's going to feed him to the animals and the birds. And then he's envious because David apparently is healthy looking and handsome or something. So pride's always envious. That's what I mean by, like, pride is the root of that. So why would you be distracted by being envious? I mean, you're here to fight a battle. How's that even getting in here? And then he becomes so blinded by his own pride, saying, telling David how he wasn't even a worthy opponent, that he walks right up to him. He says he walks closer to him. Well, look, man, if the guy's got a slingshot, it's not good at a long range. Like, the last thing you want to do is get closer, at least without protecting yourself. So it's astounding to me. Not only did God deliver David, and I believe God definitely worked in and through that, but because David allowed him to. I'm not saying God needs our permission to work in our lives, but in some sense, I don't think God will defy our own will. And so David positioned himself so that God could work in his life through his trust in God, not himself. And so he's standing there with a sound mind. Goliath, blinded by his own pride, literally walks up there and makes himself an easy target. David, with one stone, kills the man. I mean, like, David didn't even break a sweat. Right? He didn't skin his knuckles. It wasn't even a battle at all. And that's what happens in our own lives when we become, and I've done it so many times, and I still do it. But I become so convinced of my own ability, my own power, my own strength, that I begin to have faith in myself. And the problem is that if I have faith in myself, it's only a matter of time before that starts breaking down. Then I become insecure in my faith in myself, which I should be, because it's not secure to begin with. And then when other people point anything out whatsoever, I become angry and I become rude and I start becoming these other 8 things that love is not. Then pride, it rules my life. And then if I won't humble myself, I mean, those should be signs that we need to humble ourselves. It's not too late at that point. I feel angry, I feel rude because, okay, that's an indication I'm prideful. The answer is not to become more prideful and to become more blind. The answer is to just seek the truth and ask why. But pride wants us to double down. And if we keep doubling down, man, we defeat ourselves.
Yeah, so that was my question when you were talking, thinking, how does it prevent us? How does pride prevent us from being a loving person?
Yeah, because pride is me first. Pride is rooted in myself. And so because it's faith in myself, then it puts me in this position to perpetually defend myself. Mm-hmm. So anything that you say or do that I perceive as devaluing me requires that I defend myself, not you. Where love's job is to defend you, not myself. Because
that person is taking away what you have confidence in.
That's right. Yep. And in not just what you have confidence in, but the foundation of your whole belief system. Because everything, I think the solution to every problem and the cause of every problem is rooted down deep in some fundamental broken belief. So a lot of times when we try to solve problems in our lives, we try 1,000 different things, and most of the things that we are trying are not the real problem. They're symptoms of the problem. So we're trying to fix all this other stuff, basically kind of, in the example of the tree, we're trying to create our own fruit. Mm-hmm. And we exhaust ourselves in that process. But the real problem is rooted in some fundamental belief system that we have. So if my fundamental belief system and of course, nothing's more fundamental than what we trust and we believe is the truth. So if my fundamental belief system and the truth that I believe above all other things is that I'm enough and I'm better than anyone, than others, or that I sustain myself, then everything that comes out of that is going to be those other 7 things that love is: anger, rudeness, and all that. Which is, and your question was, how does it prevent us from loving? Well, that creates fear in us. We become fear, and fear is the opposite of love. Mm-hmm. So we're always doing, everything we do is for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be defensive. We're self-righteous. We don't want to hear what other people have to say. Or if we do, all we're thinking about is how that makes us look. So instead of just thinking about what is the truth here, regardless of how it makes me look, we're blinded to the truth because all we're consumed with me. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that hurts everyone around us while it's destroying us.
Yeah, you opened up by saying you think it's the most dangerous of the 8. You also said it is often disguised. How is it disguised?
All right. When I said disguise, I'll give you an example. My dad was, he brought us up hunting, and he taught us how to hunt, and the first thing we had to learn was gun safety. And so the way he approached that was, because guns are so deadly, he wouldn't allow us to play with them at all. Like, they were not a toy. And it didn't matter if it was a real gun or a toy gun. If he saw me in any way using a toy gun recklessly, then it would probably cost me my real gun privileges. And that if he ever became aware that I couldn't properly handle that gun safely, then I would lose all of my hunting privileges. And he would come off the hinges, when he witnessed that. And to me, it seems silly, especially a toy gun. So I'm like, it's like, Dad. And so I asked him once, I was like, Dad, I understand, you're worried about gun safety and all that, but this is a toy gun. Like, what difference does this make? And what he said was, listen, because I love you, like, the last thing you don't understand the devastation that comes. Either the loss of your own life because you mishandled a weapon, or maybe worse than that, you resulting in taking someone else's life because you mishandled a weapon. And so you see that as a toy gun, but it's still a gun. And so I'm not going to allow you to even get remotely close to mishandling this. And it built within me a respect for weapons that, 50 years later, I'm still safe around weapons. So, but your question was, what was your question?
How is it disguised?
How's it disguised? So I think it's disguised like the toy gun. It's like, well, it's okay to be proud of my children or to be proud of an accomplishment. And so it's like, that's no difference than playing with the toy gun. It can't hurt anything. So it presents itself as, by disguise, it presents itself as harmless. But what I'm saying to you is that pride is like 1,000 times more dangerous than any gun. You just don't realize it. And so by what I do in my own life is I become proud of a whole bunch of little harmless things. But if you really dig into them, it's a very small belief in myself. And it's planting the seeds that can grow and develop into something later, or that I can plant and grow and develop in my own children later, that are going to come back to haunt them. That the little bitty pride, the little bitty proud is going to grow up to become real pride in their lives, because we're laying a foundation and a belief system there. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't come in just like Satan and everything. It comes in disguised as harmless and almost seemingly so. But once you see what pride fully developed becomes, and the endless suffering it brings with it, the destruction of relationships, of families, of businesses, of lives, the mental anguish, the suffering, everything that comes out of, because when someone's really rooted in pride, if they let that fully develop, it's almost impossible to get them out of it. That's the hardest thing in the world to deal with. Like, you can't even get them to listen. It's like massive destruction comes from this. So
what's the remedy? How do you combat pride in your life?
Humility and the truth. So we have to be willing to face the truth.
What's the truth of that?
The truth is, I'm not enough. And I'll never be enough, like, ever. Yeah. But that's okay. That's what we got to understand. I'm not enough, but it's okay, because I have a God. Mm-hmm. And I have the power and the opportunity to love. And that if I do that, but that requires that I set myself aside. So pride is a challenge to the very fundamental belief system that either takes us towards love or away from it. So is my belief system going to be in me or in the truth? And so I feel like I'm not enough. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? That's not, no one feels like they're enough, by the way. The only people that may actually really feel like they're enough are the people who are so prideful they have become completely blinded to all truth, because they aren't enough. And then sadly, eventually in life, the reality hits. You never get away with that forever. You just don't. And then when it hits, the further you've gone in your pride, the worse the crash is. I mean, it all comes down like a giant house. So
where's gratefulness connect with pride?
I always say gratefulness is pride's kryptonite. So it's my antidote to pride, because I still struggle with, my children do well. I want to say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for that accomplishment. I'm so proud of you for being humble. I'm so proud of you for different things. And so then I ask myself, what do I mean by that? I'll go, okay, what do I mean by I'm proud of them for that? Am I really proud of them? Well, I would say if I'm really proud of my child, what I'm saying is that I'm proud of what I have done in raising them to make a good decision. And most of that's not even what I've done. I mean, I've had influence, but I'm not proud of that. I'm incredibly, I'm so grateful. So it's like I need somewhere to go with that emotion that I call pride or proud. It's not like I know it's right. I don't think that the feeling I have that they did something well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. Yeah. But is that true? Am I going to allow that good thing to become a bad thing, where it becomes a pride thing? And then I encourage them to become prideful. And then when they don't accomplish it, they feel like nothing. They got shame. Yeah. So then I lead them to live this life where they're either proud or they're ashamed. And ashamed and pride are the same thing. They're just the opposite sides of the same coin. Yeah. And I want them to live a selfless, grateful life, humble life.
So the appropriate response then we should work towards is gratefulness.
Yeah, gratefulness.
Everything's a gift. Everything's a gift. Where I think if you're prideful, it's more like you're entitled. You deserve it.
Yeah, you earned it.
You earned it, so therefore it's yours. You should have it. Where gratitude is and gratefulness is everything, breath, friends, finances, material is a gift, and you don't take ownership
or it's a
for
blessing for sure. right? It's a blessing. Sometimes we do things that contribute to something that happens, but even the things that we do were gifts. You know what I mean? So it's like everything that I have to offer to this situation, if I offer it purely and in love, which is the best possible thing, that's the strongest thing I can do. Like the weakest thing I can do is offer it in pride. Pride is weakness pretending to be strong. But if we become truly strong, meaning that we understand that we're weak, but we're willing to fight on, not for ourselves, but for God and others, then in that we can offer everything that we have from the best possible position. So pride is, it really is weakness pretending to be strong. And in the end, it eats our own lunch.
Well, Kenny, that brings us to the end of this episode. Anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
You know, when we were talking the other night, you asked me a question. I thought, I wish you would ask me that question here, and I can't remember what it was now, but I think it was, and if I could think of it, I'd know the answer. But I thought it was a great question. It was like, something along the lines of, what is it, what's a sign that we're prideful? Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. How do you know? What is something in my life that would be a gauge or a red flag for me that pride is inside?
Yeah, that's right. And as you asked that, I finally remembered the answer.
What is that?
We become easily offended. We become very easily offended. And I just thought that was important to throw in here because it's pride that is easily offended. And the problem with offense is offense destroys the offended. I mean, that's this goal in our lives. And so if someone is incredibly hard to offend, it's because they're not prideful. They're more selfless. So it's like they understand that whatever you're doing to them is saying nothing about them. And so they're not going to take the bait of changing who they are or allowing pride to take root in their lives as a response to how other people are treating them. Because when we do that, if you think about this, when we do that, we give control of our lives to other people, and we totally lose it. And then we build up this pride that is constantly demanding how we should be loved and demanding how we should be respected and demanding how we should be treated, which is beyond our control. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might be able to make someone treat you a certain way if you have the authority or the power in that situation, but you have no control over why they're doing it. So they could be seemingly respecting you, but there's no respect at all. It's a losing battle in that sense. So, but when we're prideful, that's what we do, and we become very easily offended. And when we're selfless, we're almost impossible to offend. Now, sometimes we may feel offense, but we're not going to chase that dog down that hole. It's a trap. Yeah.
This is a lot to chew on.
Yeah, it is.
But it's worth chewing on.
It really is. And man, it means a lot to me because it's one of the things that transitioned my life the most. Because I think I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but I just never forget the first time hearing someone say that pride was not a good thing, or that the Bible suggested that pride was not a good thing. And that just seemed like a foreign language, just
didn't make sense.
None whatsoever. None. And it took me a long time to understand it. But now, all these years later, it's like, I understand why my dad didn't want me playing with the toy gun now. And why, and it's like any sign of pride at all, I'm like, just stop, please stop, listen and think, because you're playing with death. Like this is the difference between life and death. And if you get started with it, it's going to be hard to stop it. So, yeah, avoid it at all costs.
This brings us to the end of this podcast, Kenny. So keep your eyes on God's word no matter what.
Yeah, trust God's word no matter what. Keep your eyes on the horizon.
I messed that one up, didn't I?
That's all right.
Until next time, we'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to the Right Fight podcast. Make sure to check out Kenny's book, The Right Fight, for more on how to live a loving life. It's available on their website, shieldsofstrength.com, Audible, and all digital platforms. If you have any questions for the podcast, you can email support@shieldsofstrength.com and put podcast as the subject. And make sure to follow Kenny on Instagram and TikTok @JohnKennedyVaughn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.